Good morning YouTube and welcome back. So in this video we're going to go over methods. For instance, the main method. So a method is derived up of several different parts. You have the access specifier for, okay, let's take the main method for example. It always comes out public static void main when you first start a console app. The public is a access specifier. Then you have static, which is I'd call it a member specifier maybe. Void is the return type. Then you have the method name, and then if it has any arguments passed, it will have the data type and the variable. So, which I do have my little cheat sheet here, and then inside the curly brackets you have the method body. So to explain this a little bit better, I'm going to work backwards. So everything we have inside of that we've done so far, all of this, was written inside of the method body. So your code is written inside of a method body. Okay. I'm not going to say all the time because there's certain things out here like struts and enumerators that are written outside of a method body, but those are kind of a method themselves. The string arguments are anything that you've written, so string str equals something. When this is passed into a string, it will receive it as a string argument, and all you have to pass in is this part, so string str, the data type and the variable name. The method's name starts with a capital letter. Every main word in it will start with a capital letter. If it does not have a return type, which we'll get into that in just a second, it will say void. If it returns a string, it'll say string. If it's a character, it'll say char. If it returns a list, it'll say list and the type of list it is. If it's an array, it'll say, like, for instance, string array, and so on and so forth. But the main method cannot return anything. Static. Static is basically, it stands alone and by itself. The only way you can call a static method, or a non-static method can call a static, I was saying that right. A non-static method can call a static method. A static method can only call a non-static method when the class is declared basically like as an object. So, and to do a non-static method, you just get rid of the static keyword. The public, the access specifier, that I do have a cheat sheet for, mainly because I have a hard time really remembering these. The main ones I use is public and internal. I'm probably going to use more, but this is basically the classification of them. So a public, which is written like you see up here, so every keyword that I say just replaces public. So you have a public access specifier, which can be accessed anywhere. There's no restriction on accessibility. It can be accessed inside the same class and outside of it. Then there is and also can be accessed by any code inside the same assembly. The assembly is your full solution. Or in another assembly that references it. So if you're ever writing code and you reference a DLL, you're referencing a public class, or a public, a public class or a public method. So for instance, string dot something here is a public class, or a public method. Then there is a private assembly or specifier that only the class or strut in which it was declared can be accessed. So if you say create a private method, the only place this can be accessed is inside of this class. A protected specifier is only accessible within the class or strut it was declared in. Okay, so protected is like a private, except if you have a class that inherits another class, then it can access it as well. And we'll get into that inheritance later. Internal can only be accessed within the program that contains its declaration. So an internal can be accessed within this class, but it can also be accessed within the same assembly, but not from another assembly. A protected internal is a combination between protected and internal. So let's create some stuff real quick. So we have leave this here. So we have the main class, or the main method, and every console app we create will start with a public static void main. And the reason for this is because that is the method that the program will call first. It's like an initialization method. So let's go ahead and set up some of these different styles, okay? So first let's set up another public static void. So we do this by just typing in public static void, and then you give it a name. And I'm going to call this one second, or I'm going to call this one PSV. And it's not going to inherit any type of variable. Okay, so now let's set up one that is not static. So public void PV, and it's not going to inherit anything as well. Then we will set up one that is public, what was in my list down here? I want to keep them in order. Public, see, private, protected, internal. So, let's keep them like this at first, okay? So we have a public void, public static void, and then a public void. So first, we're going to access the public static void. And the way you do this is by just typing in this part here. So you just type in the name of the method, so PSV. Now, what this does is this calls the PSV method. So no line of code will run until everything inside of this has ran. Okay, so see how we have this console.read key? So if I would put a console.write line and console.write and ask a question, what is your favorite subject? And then we're gonna have a string sub equals console.read line, and then before this one here, I'm going to do a console.write line end. Or actually, I'm going to copy these and we'll put it below this one. That way you'll see exactly how this works. So let's start this. It builds and asks what's your favorite subject. I'm just going to put a letter in and hit enter. And now you can see that it paused. And it paused right here. So if I hit space, and then it says end, and waits for my next input. So now what we're going to do is we're going to access, we have this public static void. Now we know that we can access a static member from another static member. Now if we want to access PV from here, we can't just type in PV. That doesn't work. So what we have to do is we have to declare the class we're in program. Kind of create an object, if you will. And by doing that, we type in the name of the class, program, and then we create a variable to store program as. So I'll just say P equals a new program. Okay. Now we can say p.pv. So that is that's how you go into a non-static method. So I'm going to change these a little bit. I'm going to go console.writeLine main method, and then console.readKey, or .readKey. And then in here, I'm going to declare the string P, or not P, but string equals PSV. And I'm going to write console.write line say str. So now what's going to happen is the main method is going to call PSV. Okay. Now we have the word, we create the string that is determined as in PSV, and we write it. Then we create an object of program so that we can call the non-static void PV. So now what I want to do is I want to pass a string into PV. And the way I do that is because it's already declared as a string up here, we don't have to declare it again inside the method call. So I can type in str. So, and we get this little bit quick squiggly dot, meaning that there's an error. Now the reason why we get this error is because this is not returning or taking in the argument str. Now, if we just type in str, PV, method PV does not know what str is. So it's kind of like reading a book, taking the cover off and having just a black binding, I guess. He doesn't, or how about this, putting a gift inside of a box that you only have the key to and giving it to someone else. They don't know what it is. So what you have to do is you have to give them the key so that they can see what it is themselves. Sounds like an easy enough explanation, I guess. So now PV knows that string, what string is. So what we can do is we can go console.writeLine and we can pass in str. So I'm going to go like this real quick. So we have only one read key before this writes main method. So if we write, it says NPV, NPV, and then waits for us, and then goes back to the main method. So what we can do now is we can say, we can change string into something else if we wanted to. So let's change string. So now we're going to go, let's go str equals, because we called it here, it's declared, in PV, and then just write it. So console.writeLine str. Now what we can do is we can start messing around with return types. So let's return str. So return, let's not return str, let's create an integer. How about that? So int num equals 5. Now what we're going to do is we're going to return the number back here. So what we have to do is type in just return num. Now we have an error because it says string program.pv returns void. So we have to change void into int because that's what we're returning. But now there's another problem. p.pv, it might not say it, but it doesn't have any use for none. So we have to give it a reason. So we can go int num equals. Now when we return num back to PSV, it's going to store the number 5, and I'll call this something else like n. So number is going to be, or n is going to be none. So we can write console.write line n. So when that returns it, it's going to write the number n to the console, and then it's going to pass back to the main method. I really hope this isn't confusing anyone. So let's try this out. So when I hit start, it should only do one console.readKey. So it says in PSV, because we went from the main method. So here, let's go to the very top of here and go console.writeLine and say in main method, so that we can see exactly how it goes. So we have in main method, which was passed first, then it went to the PSV method, then it went to the PV method, took the number 5 from the from the PV method, passed it back to the PSV method, and then went back to the main method. So you're just kind of passing it around, kind of like an index in a way. I mean, well, not really. I take that back. Scratch that. So that's basically methods in a nutshell. So let me kind of do this, minimize those. Now let's look at private protected. So a private method, so a private void, we'll go private void priv. So now to call a private void, we can't. So let's make an instance of program, p equals new program, p.priv. That's the only way you can call a private method. And we'll get into more of the private and protected when we get into classes, and I'll show you how those work. But right now, all you really have to remember is don't worry too much about the public and the private and stuff like that. Mainly what this whole video was supposed to be about, kind of over a little bit, explaining everything. But mainly what this was is calling a PSV method, so public static void PSV. So calling a method, you just type in the method's name as long as it's public, as long as it's static, from a static class. So if we're working with public static, it works exactly like this. And if you wanted to, you could call the main method again, but you really don't want to do that. Because it always comes back to the main method anyway. So putting a loop would be better. So calling a method, you just call the method's name, and it will go to that method. And when that method is done, then it reverses back to the method it was at, and then keeps going. So it always goes back to the method you first call it in, unless you end it, or quit the program completely. To return, or to send an object there, like I said, all you do is declare the object, and then type in the variable, declare the variable again inside the area you want to call it. And then to return it, you just type in return the variable you want to return, and then change the return type from void to whatever you're returning. So, I know I kind of rambled on and said the same things twice, but I really hope you understood what I meant or what I said. In the next one, we're going to go over classes, where we'll actually get into these a little bit more. But right now, just kind of mess around with methods and stuff, and if you need any more, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you have any specific questions, but yeah, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comment section below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video, and I will see you in the next video.